Hello, Singapore. This panel will be about where technological disruptions and inventors meet, the Singaporean perspective. And it's my great pleasure to introduce the moderator, Ahmad Piraiee, who's the director of Startup Grind Warsaw. And the panelists will be Nairne, who's the MD of Go Singapore, Kelvin, who's the co-founder and CIO of GTR Ventures, yay, one of our sponsors for the startups, Debneel Mukherjee, who's the founder and the managing partner of Decacorn Capital, and Paulina Bialek, who's the director of Expara. Please give a warm welcome to our first panel.
Good afternoon and good evening, depending on if you're in Singapore or if you're in Poland. Before starting, it would be great, maybe starting from the top of the screen, like Paulina, maybe you can start briefing, really introduce yourself, and then we can move on.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Paulina Bialek. I'm director at Expara, venture capital firm headquartered in Singapore, with offices in the whole region of Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines. We invest, but also accelerate startups from all around the world. And today we launched our new program, Global Accelerator, that is dedicated for startups, creating solutions for post-pandemic world. So
post-pandemic.
Post-pandemic.
Okay. We'll start on a positive note. It's very good. Okay, so, and Debneel?
So we are a cross-border VC headquartered in Singapore and licensed with the Singapore Monetary Authority, but we invest across the world, essentially in key destinations with large investment base in Israel and in the US, where we have our offices too. And we are now very seriously looking into Europe, particularly the Central and Eastern Europe. And last year we have landed up doing investments in Estonia. And we hope to continue this journey once all this noise around us settles down.
Okay, very good. And Ulla?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Nairne, and I'm Managing Director of Go Singapore. It's a business technology platform that's going to grow into Polish Singaporean Chamber of Commerce soon. And we concentrate on technology, innovation, and supporting startups. And as Singapore, as you know, it's all about technology and investments, and the way how they meld technology into everyday life is tremendous and truly inspirational. We're bridging innovation and investment between Poland and Central Europe with Singapore and Southeast region. I'm also a managing partner of Star Fund and Venture Capital, which is one of the top VC funds in Poland, which finances technology startups from Central Europe. Thank you.
Very good. And last but not the least, Kelvin, if you can introduce yourself a bit. I'm sorry, we don't have your audio.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yep. Now, yes.
Yep.
Now it's perfect.
Right. Good evening, depending on what time it is over there. Good morning, good afternoon. Kelvin from GTR Ventures. We are VC focused on fintech, specifically B2B fintech. Very happy to be associated with Move Summit and with the esteemed panel. This is the first time for me doing a virtual panel, so please pardon me if I'm not used to the new normal in this world. But very happy to be here. We invest globally. Five in Southeast Asia, one in China, one in Hong Kong, one in Africa, two in London, one in Sri Lanka even. We continue to believe that the future is in sustainable SME finance. And we hope that the Central and Eastern European region will be where we plant our flag for the next investment.
So guys, just to also make sure everybody would know the whole story. So first of all, we only have 20 minutes. And at the same time, if the time would allow us, we're going to have at least one or two questions from the audience. So feel free to ask your questions and then we will answer that. Also, just to tell you a little bit, I'm also the director for Startup Grind. So we have more than 600 chapters all around the world. That includes Singapore, Poland, and everywhere else. And that's why we try to connect people with each other. We also have a very good panel because, like, gender balance, region balance, and everything is going to be fine. And we're just gonna start the whole conversation around the whole technological disruption and investors and where they meet. by exactly where do you really feel we have to find this innovation and technological disruption? And maybe Ula can just start this whole thing.
Well, this is not easy, as we used to think in categories of what we know, and it's difficult to know what we don't know. To me, the number one way is to spot an opportunity is to look for circumstances where solving a problem is complicated, is expensive, or can only occur in fixed locations, for example. I think in terms of Singapore and Poland made enormous shift, I think, in terms of innovation in the last 5 decades, quickly catching up with the big players. And I think now the innovation for those places is key to whether they carry on in surges ahead or falls behind in the years to come.
Okay.
I could say from, because in the last year I came to Singapore quite often, visiting different laboratories, innovation centers, university, different DC. And what I learned from Singapore innovators is that Singaporeans are very good observers, and they keep open for others. Correct me if I'm wrong, Debneel, Kelvin, but that's was my impression. And to me, their success lies in the thinking about themselves as a smart nation and look what their needs are locally first, and then innovate on that solution, and then search for global application. And that's how, to me, they were able to get this disruptive technologies. I've been amazed, for example, in my visit in December, visiting the ST Engineering Open Lab, to see how they made, for example, Asian and children face masks. That was in December last year, and just innovating just at the beginning of the outbreak of coronavirus. And why nobody thought about it before, I don't know, but that was spot on.
Let's just keep it more close to
working at the
technology and
moment.
investment, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm working at the moment with extremely disruptive startup called Trendor, and is generating Poland with international team. I think that's a very having international team. It's a very good for innovation and thinking disruptively. And I think they're all going to disrupt all the advertising world, for example. And I'm really excited about that. And I think we're going with that to Singapore and all the Asian markets next.
Perfect. Thank you. Look, just to also have a perspective of a person who lived in Singapore and also is based in Poland, maybe we can also have another point of Paulina, that if you really want to describe how Singapore, like really looks like, about the innovation scene and the characteristics. So how do you describe it to other people from other countries and other startups?
So, I was wondering for a long time what innovation really means. And a lot of countries that were indicated to be innovative, now they are panicking because of the coronavirus that broke out a couple of weeks ago. And I think that the current situation is helping us to verify who is really innovative, who is able to react properly and on time when the crisis comes. And it's not only about the treatment, but about the whole system that Singapore was able to create, and other countries in Southeast Asia, to react very quickly, very properly. The medicine they have on a very high level, the newest technologies they have in many different sectors, not only medicine, not only biotechnology, but also like security and many different other sectors. And I think that this is kind of like a phenomenon that we have, because Europe knew about this crisis that is coming a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't do almost anything. I mean, that's what's going on in Italy. The mortality rate is at the level of 10%, Spain 5%, and in Singapore it's less than 0.5%. So it shows the way this country is able to react when the crisis comes. And at the same, I can also say here a very interesting story that I have, because 2 weeks ago my boss, he called me and he said that I have a new idea for a new project, so let's create this global accelerator for the startups who are creating the solutions for post-pandemic world. And it also shows that in Singapore, they do not think about today, but they also think about the future. So now, when everybody else is panicking in the States, in Europe, we are already in Asia thinking what's gonna be next, what's gonna be in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, in a couple of years. And I think that this is also the definition of innovation. So yeah, so this is how
Very good. Okay, so a lot of good things. Also, Debneel, because yesterday you had a very interesting video on the networking part of the Wolf Summit. You were talking about the situation of investments and everything. So we have the Central Eastern Asia and then Central Eastern Europe. Because if we really want to talk only about Singapore as a country of like 5 million, you can correct me on the numbers, and also around like much more than that in Poland, but we're talking about more than 600 million in Southeastern Asia and Central Eastern Europe. So where do you really feel are the advantages and disadvantages when it comes to these two regions?
I think the two regions, there is a significant amount of similarity if you really look at it, um, in terms of economies and in terms of the economic and the geopolitical order as well. While Europe has the European Union, for which the CEA, the Central and Eastern Europe, are most of the countries are part of or going to be part of, then what we have here is the ASEAN. Together, it's about 650 million people, while Europe is about 550, 600 million people. So there is a lot of, and these countries are all quite small. If you really look at individual countries in ASEAN and then compare with Central and Eastern Europe, they are almost the similar population or market sizes. But then there are two very different demarcations, and that's where I think there is a mutual fit. Where are those? First is that if you see the technology adoption curve, that's very, very low in ASEAN or Southeast Asia. And again, in terms of demographics, it's very favorable. The elderly populations, like earlier, why we have so much of a mortality in Italy? Because it's mostly elderly population. The elderly populations in our part of Asia, or in this part of Asia, Indonesia, Vietnam, it's very, very young population. With a very productive work life, and both couples, they are in mostly in a new wave of livelihood, but therefore they have a lot of aspirational value for technology. On the other hand, if you look at Europe, most of these technologies have come in. I mean, let's take online commerce. Europe combinedly competes with that of almost America. These are the two main places where it's approximately about 70% kind of a thing. But here it is much lower. And there is a lot of technology that has been put in place in Europe to address this kind of economic activities, which can easily find way over here and find a very big market. But again, in terms of disadvantage, there is one very basic disadvantage which we have to all overcome. We are still looking very, very focused into our own national spaces. Despite the European Union, probably one of the wonderful experiments that the world had, you don't need to take out your passport, don't need to change your currency. Yet within, as I've seen the European countries closely, there's a lot of holding back when it comes to Holland dealing with Germany and Germany dealing with France and France dealing with Spain. We have to really come out of that. And the same thing here. When you go to Indonesia, the Indonesian startups, they first want to address the Indonesian market, and they want to perfect their addressal of the Indonesian market. No, we have to really get to scale, because ultimately it's the scale that will matter, and that only will let us compete with United States, where basically we will find our holy grail, and that's where our Hall of Fame and our exits all lie. The valuations, they all lie there, and that's all about scale.
Perfect.
So I think yeah.
Good. So Kelvin, talking about going global and taking advantage of different characteristics of different regions, as a person that you are based in Singapore, how do you really feel like, what are the most important things that you can see in the Polish market for Singaporean startups?
I think we have to look at, let's go back to the theme of this panel, which is where technological disruption and inventors meet, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why people are drawn to Singapore is because we're inclusive, we allow technology commercialization to take place. But I'd like to stress that this is not a place like Israel, nor is it China, where disruption in Israel happened because of a necessity to innovate. You know, just like how in Africa, you know, you got the crazy FX rates, which is why, you know, you got BitPesa that was born for mobile money. China disruption occurred simply because Google and Facebook are not allowed over there, right? And then they have their own market, and that allowed them to then disrupt. Singapore in itself, our strength uh, is in that we allow these different forms of disruption from other countries like CEE, Poland, and China, and Southeast Asia, and Indonesia, and even Africa to come in here and kind of find their own space. And we allow that space to flourish and foster. So in itself, and if I'm a little bit critical of our own system, I would say that we cannot produce naturally an inventor right from the Singaporean educational system. We're not meant to. I mean, you correctly pointed out that our population base was only 5 million. In fact, it's actually 5.5, right? So the strength of our nation is actually to agglomerate not just CEE, but just Israel, you know, Chinese, Southeast Asia, and then in that environment allow not copy-paste approach to disruption, but more a space and an ecosystem where money, ideas, people, talent can come and go. So I think I just wanted to set that context. Now, specific to Poland, I would say that surprisingly, Polish people are very much like Singaporean and Asian people. That's my first cultural surprise. And I think when you have a cultural similarity, then it gives birth to ability to do things together, right? And I think the cost structure makes sense. The arbitrage is there for investors like ourselves, Ula, you know, Debneel, Paulina, and yourselves, to create this arbitrage where technology from CEE, obviously the higher end of the technology, that wants to find a market, you know, in Asia, in APAC, and this is where we can come together. So I mean, I've just had a screening of about 56 startups through the organizers, and I've shortlisted 10. Very good, very good baseline. You know, I think technology, the level is there. It's now about the product fit to market. So that's my comment for now.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. I mean, the fact of feeling that they're culturally connected, I think that's a very important thing regarding the investment part of that. I mean, as a person who also have always an eye on the financial sector, I mean, looking at all the financial markets right now, everything is going down. I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not going to predict the future, but Poland passed all the recessions after the, you know, like the new Republic of Poland appeared. And it is strongly look like that Poland is going to pass this recession too, because looking at all the other markets, Polish stock exchange and other things are having a very, very minimum amount of impact on this whole thing. And considering the fact that we only have a few more minutes, where do you really feel like this economical stability of Poland? Yes, I agree that especially Debneel, yesterday you clearly mentioned about the beauty of investment in Singapore and everything. But still, Poland, if especially also going back to Paulina's and post-pandemic world, where do you really feel like, and this is answer to any one of you because we only have like 3 more minutes to answer that, that if this economical stability is going to stay, do you really feel there's going to be more investment in Poland, or still Polish startups have to find some investments in Singapore?
So I'll quickly go on that, as that, of course, so for me, clearly, we are going to live another day, and this is not going to be the end of it. Rather, we will see the medical part of it finish much faster than we anticipate. We are probably already seeing light at the end of the tunnel because China rates have fallen. Japan also, the same thing is happening. It's the West who has to get their acts together, and it happened because they did not take it seriously. It has been so well for us because we had an experience of SARS previously, and it was from day zero. From very beginning, we have been doing this with lot of strictness right from February. Polish companies, Polish startups, they, like anywhere else, and it's a very good thing, they will have to compete in the space with everyone else. But Central Eastern Europe, I clearly feel, stands a very clear advantage over Western Europe or the Northern Europe countries, essentially because they know that they have very little market. They know they have to, and that's what will push them to become global. Today, the theme is that if you have to really make it anywhere to the top, you have to look at scale, you have to grow, you have to become big. And technology gives us wonderful tools to actually do these things. The only thing is the mindset. If I feel that no, my backyard is big enough and I don't want to look anywhere else, that's where probably I will fail, which is not the case with Central Eastern Europe. And so therefore, including Poland, there's a lot. And then the cost structures also in Poland are very low. The
Perfect.
quality of the technological skills are very high. And therefore, we can actually see a lot of opportunity out there.
So guys, we agree that there's going to be a lot of opportunities and at the same time, very interesting cultural connection. We can see that two ladies that, like they have a big interest in Singapore and two Singaporean guys that they are having a lot of eyes on the Polish market. So let's just see how this whole matchmaking and everything is going to go. We're still going to have 2 more days of Wolf Summit that, is going to be a lot of opportunities. It would be very good also that if you guys can try to put your contacts on the event part. At the same time, I know that your information is already available in the profile, so everybody can try to find you later just to keep this conversation going. So thank you very much for everyone. It was a really great panel and hope to stay in touch. So have a good evening and good afternoon. Bye-bye.